So this course name is Introduction to VLSI. Is basically the what is there actually in the VLSI domain. So when we do any signal processing or when we transmit any data from one place to another, we use some type of communication system, or we do transmission either in analog or digital form. So there are various drawbacks, or we can say some advantages with digital, and there are some advantages with analog. So depending on the choice, we do the transmission. So VLSI is actually the integration of the number of components on a single IC. So how to do integration? So let us first start with your CIF. So in the CIF, your CIF, from here onwards you will change, you will see the changes in your CIF. The changes is made based on your Bloom taxonomy. So actually the Bloom taxonomy is a, what you say, it is a learning methodology presented long back, and which nowadays every institute is adopting, and according to that the syllabus is framed. So if you, so slight introduction to the Bloom taxonomy I will give you. So it is basically divided in six parts. So it goes in from top, from bottom to top. Like first, in any course, the first thing is done is your remembrance, means you recall the things. After recalling, you try to understand, that is your level 2 step, that your understanding is level 2. And then once you recall and understand the things, then we go for the applying, means we apply the whatever we have learned in realizing any function. And after application, we, you should be able to analyze those things. So if you are successfully completing all these levels, then you will go to the evaluate stage, where you can evaluate the things, that what are the things were required and what are the missing. And based on all these learnings, finally you will be able to create the things. So if this methodology is followed in any, or in any course, then it is said that you have perfectly learned that course. So based on this criteria only, your CIF is, your COs of the CIF is modified, and even the CIF contents also. So basically your CIF is divided into subparts. So now whatever CIF I will represent, that you will see, the first part will contain the information about the title of course, the course code, which type of course it is, like it is a core or program elective, then any prerequisites is required or not, how many contact hours, lectures per week, and total credits. So all these informations you will see in this form, it will be represented. The second part will be consisting of your course outcomes. That course outcomes you must have been seen. In the course outcome, on the right hand side you will see Bloom's level. This Bloom's level is nothing but your, this Bloom taxonomy. So like remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create, these are the levels. So these levels where the course outcome maps, so that is shown in the right hand side of the table. That will be your third part. In the fourth part of your CIF, you will see your course topics, and then the fifth and sixth part will contain what is your textbook and reference books, and which will be used in the course. And lastly, the seventh part is your, this table you will see at the end of your CIF. So this table is actually the mapping of the course outcomes. Like six course outcomes were there, and those course outcomes were mapped with the Bloom's level. And then after that, there are 15 program levels, like from 1 to 11 program. PO stands for program outcome, 1 to 12, and then PSO, program specific outcomes are there. So like in PO1 is there, like how much learning has been done. So these are all, these are basically the task of the instructor. So this table you need not to worry about, it will be shown in all the sales, but just for your understanding, I'm telling, this is the mapping of program outcome with the course outcomes. Okay. So now I will show you your CIF, what things you will learn in the CIF. So this is your CIF. As I told, this is your course title is your Introduction to VLSI. This is your course code, and prerequisite required is the basic understanding of your analog and basic electronics. Total there will be 40 hours of lecture and 3 credits is there. Fine. And these are the course outcomes of the course. Like you will be able to understand the MOSFET, MOSFETs and digital. If you look back at the Bloom's level, then it will map to level 1 and 2. Similarly, the course outcome second is that you will be able to explain or analyze the MOS device. This is the basic core element to design any VLSI circuits. Then it characteristic and how to implement it in digital. Then third course outcome, you will be able to demonstrate or examine the circuits which will be used using the tools like Cadence or Spice. If possible, we will try to introduce you these tools where we design these circuits. Then you will be also able to analyze your this internal secondary effects in the circuits, like what is the nonlinearity, why the circuit does not behave what is actually required, why there is deviation from the theoretical between practical. And then at the last you will be understanding the MOS families, which will which will be offering very high level of integration in current technology. Means in current technology what is going to happen or what is being happen, that will be introduced. So these are the course topics. So unit 1 is basically will talk about your MOS transistor. MOS transistor you must have gone through earlier courses also in the MOS transistor. Here also it will start with some basic theory, not the complete theory, but some basic glimpse of MOS transistor you will see. And then after that, what is the role of VT in your digital logic, means see how the VT will play the role. And then you will see your IV and CV characteristics, because since we are dealing with digital means switching of circuits. Switching of circuits will depend upon charging and discharging, and charging and discharging means your time constant, and time constant is a function of RC. So we should know when the MOSFET offers some resistance and what are the capacitance associated with that MOSFET which is creating that much delay, or how we can control those delays. So for that understanding you should be knowing what is your CV characteristic. Then capacitive elements of the MOS device, it is nothing but your parasitic elements of the MOSFETs. And then some logic implementation of CMOS. After that, using MOS, we'll design you one CMOS architecture, that is a combination of P and N, and then how to realize the basic functions at the MOS level from gate to MOS. So then we'll go for unit 2. Unit 2 is your MOS inverters. MOS inverter is basically your through a static CMOS inverter and its transfer characteristic. The CMOS inverter is simple, your this inverter logic realized using CMOS logic. So that we will see, and a detailed analysis of CMOS inverter will be done in unit 2, like what should be the transistor sizing, how the technology scaling is affecting this or this inverter, and what types of gate delays are there, how it is computed, then what is noise margin of the circuit. So all these things will be completed in unit 2. Then coming to unit 3. So unit 3 is basically the circuit topology, how we can realize the circuits. Now you know the simple MOS transistor. Now using the MOS transistor in different ways gives the different names. Like sometimes it will be called as a pass transistor logic. So in pass transistor, how MOSFETs are connected. If we go for dynamic your transmission gate, then there is different configuration of MOS. Domino logic. So these are the different techniques of realization of your circuits at the transistor level. And the advantage is each of the technique will offer different advantage. Like some of the technique will give you low power, some of the technique will give you high switching speed. So all these techniques you will be studying in unit 3. Then unit 4 is again the same, like digital you have learned sequential and combinational, the same way is here, but here you will be working on transistor level, not on the gate level. So all these things you will see. And then lastly you will go for the semiconductor memories like RAM, ROM, and how it is designed, how at the transistor level RAM and ROMs are working, how it is storing the data, how the data erase is possible. All these things will be shown in unit 5. And these are the textbooks which you will refer. So this textbook is main, that CMOS digital integrated circuits analysis and design by Kang. So right now we will be following the textbook number 2 and textbook number 1. From these two books we will cover the syllabus before made. And of course, your reference book, if you want to read the reference book, then I will suggest you to go for Neil Weste. This is the best book which you will make you understand the deep insight of VLSI circuits. Then there are some additional web resources are there, and these are the evaluation methods. Like we will have quiz of 25 marks, total quiz. Midterm will take off 25 marks and final will be 50. So total 100 will be covered by this. And then this is a COPO matrix. Okay, like I told that program outcome, how it is mapping to the course outcome. This is about your CIF. Okay, so so any question till here? Sir, which book you? I'll follow Kang, the second number. Right now we will start with Kang. No, there will be quizzes. There will be, I hope, we'll take two quizzes, before mid and after mid, and total it will be marks of 25. Okay, fine. So now coming to the today we will not start the CIF titles and the course title, sorry, the course content, but we'll see what is actually VLSI, some what is the parameters, what are the VLSI actually means. So VLSI basically stands for very large scale integration. Okay, understand the word very large scale integration. Integration means what? There is two words, differentiation and integration. Integration means to make it at a one place, to integrate, to collect, okay, to calculate an area, to integrate everything. So it is a very large scale, means integration done at the very large scale. So it is a process of creating integrated circuits by combining thousands of transistors in a single chip. A single chip, and then there are number of transistors are there. So it began in 1970. It came in 1970, just after the invention of MOSFETs, when complex semiconductor technologies were being developed. And the first device which you will say the VLSI device is a microprocessor device. Okay, it does lot of operations. Okay, so before VLSI technology, ICs were there, but it has a very limited number of applications. Okay, because that time those there were no such type of softwares or how to integrate. There were no particular proper protocols, so there were the discrete components to make a system, and making the discrete component based system takes consumes a lot of area. So any electronic circuit like CPU, ROM, RAM, or any other logic can be built using VLSI into a single chip. So if you say a family, so VLSI is a not a, it came automatically or eventually it came. It is a successor of some family. So that successor is called your, first came SSI, then came MSI, then came LSI. So what are these SSI, MSI, LSI? Is your large small scale integration, means some hundred of transistors they connected and then made some function, and that function then merged with the discrete components. Then with the time, according to Moore's law, the number of transistors we can double. This means the engineers are, or designers are working in such a way that they can reduce the transistor of the feature, the dimensions of the transistor, such that in the same die area I can increase the number of transistors. So that the Moore's told that every 18 months we can double. Looking at the scenario and looking at the interest of the designers, he predicted. So it came to MSI, then came LSI large scale, and then came VLSI. And still now we are struggling with VLSI. Now, though we are in the nanometer technology, but then also still VLSI is existing. So this is the number of transistors shown in each of the levels. Like when SSI was there in some 1970s, so only 100 of transistors they can merge, and after that when they connect, then a lot of loading effects and different consequences come. So they cannot integrate much on that because dimensions were also very large. When slowly they worked on, they did the research and they reduces the feature size, and then they accommodated more number of transistors in the same die area. Then comes the what called MSI, medium scale. Then came LSI, and then comes the VLSI, and finally the ULSI is going on. And since the amount of transistors being were doubled each after each 18 months, according to Moore's law, the trend goes like this. Like earlier 4004 the processor was there, then slowly the development and we are working to Pentium processors right now. Fine. So why VLSI is required? Now VLSI gives you an idea that how to improve the design. Okay, just take the MOSFET and connect the MOSFET will not give you the function. There must be some rules and regulations to be followed, that in this fashion if we connect, then only I can get my desired output. So those protocols are being implemented, or those protocols are defined under VLSI domain, that when we have to do large number of integration, what are the restrictions, what are the boundary conditions we should know, and that is once that is framed, then we can do the integration. So it helped in improving the design. The when we go according to the rules, then we see that there are low parasitics in the circuits. So when there is low parasitic, what happens? There is less number of capacitance. When less capacitance are there, definitely the speed gets high. Then of course over to that is your low power consumption. When you increase the number of transistors and each transistor is consuming, let's say, nanowatt of power, and then 1,000 number of transistors are there, then what happens? 1,000 into nanowatt, it becomes to a some milliwatt or watt power. So that power, so that's why even nanowatt is a your issue with the design, because if we go in a femto, then we can further reduce the power consumption. So we low power consumption was also a factor. That's why we go through the VLSI protocols, and then physically the smaller dimensions. So integration reduces, after all the main target is the integration will reduce the manufacturing cost. Almost no manual assemblies are there. This VLSI is done automated fashion, and this when large number of productions are done, then definitely cost effective process are there. Okay, so that's why this VLSI is chosen, and the advantage again the same thing. It will reduce the size of circuits, the cost will reduce, and since capacitance reduces, the speed will reduce, and sorry, the speed will improve, and definitely it will require less power than discrete components. If any particular system is made using discrete components, and one the same system is realized using VLSI technology, definitely the VLSI technology will lead to the low power, because everything we are accommodating on a single chip. Then more reliability, it will offer more reliability, and of course it will take a very small area. Then lot of applications are there in analog as well as in digital. You will see lot of applications. And then microprocessor, PCs, microcontroller, memories, your some your ASIC chips, optical switches, all are these VLSI applications. So now coming to VLSI methodology, how what is the design methodology when we do VLSI, when we say VLSI? So the thing is, the target is to process for creating a design, any particular design to create, how to create, what we have to take in mind, what things we have to consider, that all things are defined in VLSI methodology, the design methodology and the design methodology. And what is the goal of design methodology? The design cycle means how much time you will consume in designing that particular system. Then comes the complexity, how complex you are designing, because after every target has reduced number of design cycle, reduce the complexity, improve the performance, whether reuse of this circuit is possible or not, and then reliability of the circuit is there or not. So these are the goals of the VLSI. Okay, so now coming to the integrated circuits, how integrated circuits are done or designed. So this is your IC design part. Here the designer works. So what happens, like a IC designers, what it says, the silicon foundry is there. Silicon foundry means the companies which are producing the silicon wafers. So what they do, so they give the silicon foundry whatever the industry, let's say your IBM is there, or let's say your TSMC. These are the companies which do fab. So what say IBM will say that I am developing a silicon wafer and my dice area is this much, and whenever you design the circuit, keep in mind this certain number of parameters that don't go beyond this X factor. Use supply voltage until this X voltage. Don't increase the electric field to this much values, because our company is fabricating only this much tolerance. So these design rules are provided by the silicon foundry to the IC designers, and then it also gives the simulation model and parameters. Simulation models and parameters means here the MOSFET models. Okay, MOS models. Like if you have known to the technology, you must have heard 180 nanometer technology, 7 nanometer technology, 14 nanometer technologies. So like 7 nanometer, 14 nanometer, or 180 nanometer. So what are these? These are the technologies. So they give, according to these technologies, the MOS, let's say it is MOS 1, it is MOS 2, this is MOS 3. So different MOSFETs are existing. There different MOSFETs are provided by the silicon foundry of different technologies. And based on this only we realize the circuit and we do the analysis. So it gives the simulation model and the parameters according to the technology to the IC designers. And then after that, what the IC designers do, it uses these models, design the circuit and give the mask layout. Mask layout means it will not give in the figure like this, rather it will translate this one in the binary forms, and because the machines do the fabrication part, so this is sent as a mask layout architecture. Layout is there. Layout means like when we design any building, what we do on pen and paper, we design the architecture of the house, that how it should be built, the blueprint. So that is your mask layout. The IC designer gives the mask layout of the circuit to the silicon foundry, then it fabricates and give back to the designer in the form of integrated circuits. So this way it works how the IC develops. And in all this process, before doing the fabrication, if suppose I have given some design to the silicon foundry and it fabricated and gave me back, and when I do the post fabrication simulation, got to know, oh, my design is not working, there was a slight fault, there was some wire connection fault was there. So what happened, I will say, okay, sorry, there was a fault, you do refabrication. But what about the cost? This much labor they have spent, they have spent so much money on the fabrication, I have to bear those money. So in order to protect these things, this loss of monies, we use CAD tools. CAD tools, what does it do? Whatever designs we have there, first we verify using CAD tools that whether it is working fine or not. What you call it a simulation. We use the softwares like Xilinx is there. So there are some CAD tools like Cadence and Mentor. These are industry. The Cadence is the name of company. Mentor is also a name of the company. Silicon industry companies are there. So they provide their tools. You use their tools using these MOSFETs, and when the design satisfies, then only we send for the fabrication. And then there is some reliability, no, the circuit will work in the real time also, because we have used the industry specific tools. Okay, so this way the IC community works. And then comes the how the things goes. Suppose I have some system requirements. Okay, this is my system and this is my X requirement, and I want to fulfill. So what will happen, it will go to the designer. Designer will, what it will do, it will bring out some algorithm like how to implement these functions, what is the user asking. Once that mathematical operations are done, like these will be the equations which I have to satisfy. After that, it will go for the hardware architecture. Hardware architecture means it will look, once we dissolve any requirement in the mathematical form, it will be dissolved either in multiplication, division, on some mathematical operations. And now for each mathematical operation, we know how to transform mathematics into the circuit. Like multiplication, what we can do, multiplication, join the two wires, wired logics are there. So those concepts are used to develop the hardware architecture. So in this hardware architecture, we use various methods. Like we can go through HDL, hardware description language, which you were using, I think, hope that is VHDL. Another way we can use at MOS transistor level, that we get circuit simulations. Through circuit simulation, we check whether we are able to realize this particular mathematical operations or not. So in these two ways we can do it in the hardware part. So once hardware part is completed and it is matching to the algorithm what is designed, then we go for the synthesis. So why we do synthesis? The synthesis will give you how many hardware components you have used in actual. Okay, this we have designed, and then the synthesis will give you in the real time what are the components you have used and whether these are feasible in real time or not. some hypothetically some hypothetical operations you must not have done, or the circuit you have connected in such a fashion which in real time is not feasible. Okay, because connecting the circuit is different thing, but in real time when we implement the circuit it has to obey all the laws. So that time maybe synthesis can fail, so synthesis gives you the confirmation. Once synthesis is successful means कि now your circuit, your coding is, everything is fine, it can be mapped in the real time also. So once synthesis is completed, then we go for the DFT process. DFT is designed for test. In this, what we do, we give random number of faults. Like AND gate is there, so A into B will give me output when both are one. But what I will do in the AND gate, I will give one. I will fix this voltage as a zero, and I will check what I am getting output. If I am getting one, this means there is a false. If I am getting zero, then it is fine. So that is your design for test. DFT, design for test. Here we give some faults and we check whether my circuit is detecting those faults or not, whether fault detection is possible or not. So once it all our things are confirmed, then we go for the layout. This physical is nothing but the layout. Okay, layout is nothing but the, it is the process of designing the circuits, the hardware in the form of metal layers. Okay, like some metals are the silicon and then some polysilicon, some metal layers are, these are your metal layers, which of course is possible in your cadence tool as well as in the mentor tool. So we do physical design layout. So once this physical design layout is there, then we do for simulation. So we are doing two simulations. Once we are doing simulation at this place, here we are doing simulation, and we are also doing simulation at this physical level. So this is called pre layout simulation. This is called so what is happening in the pre-layout simulation, we'll get some information about current and voltages, but the exact information of parasitic may not come in the pre-layout submission. So in the post layout, when we deposit metal layers and everything, then between two metals some capacitance or inductance will be formed. So that information is extracted from the post layout simulation, and the goal is that pre-layout simulation and post layout simulation should match. Once it is matched, then we say okay, whatever parasitics were there that are negligible form and we can neglect those, and we can go for the fabrication. And then once it all are satisfied, then we will go for fabrication, because fabrication takes a lot of huge amount of money, so we do not want to waste the money. So at each stage we go for the confirmation of the logics what we are going to get in the real time. So once fabrication is done, again the testing of the chip is done, that whether it is the fault from the designer side or it is the fault from the fabrication side. So once test is successful, then we give to the place where it is required. Like if you want to do system integration, then we do integration, that we merge this ICs with the discrete components, and then we design the system and we provide the system to the market. Okay, so this way it works from the requirement to the system level design. Fine. So till here, any queries? Will nanotechnology take over VLSI? Nanotechnology is going on still, but since what is the problem now also, if we talk about analog design, digital we are switched to 7 nanometer, but in analog we are still up to 180 nanometer. because once we are decaying to 180 nanometer, once we are going below 180 nanometer, there is a lot of secondary order effects. And analog is working in a continuous time. Okay, so if millivolt signals are there and we are working below 180 nanometer, then there are a lot of secondary order effects. Secondary order means you can say EMI interference is there, electromagnetic interference is there, so which deteriorate my performance. So that's why still people are struggling with the analog design. But now in digital, it is not the case. We are working in this nanometer, and we are getting this 7 nanometer circuits working fine. And I think IBM is doing that circuit developments. Nanotechnology here means the working in the nanometer range. Okay, that is below 100 micron. Then go to nano, now below that. Okay. Okay. So now comes the design styles, how we design. So whenever we design the circuit, there are three possible ways. One is called full custom design, another is called semi custom, and another is called FPGA based designs. So after all, what is the goal? You should get the hardware component. So full custom means from the scratch level, designer is involved in the process of fabrication, that he will say ki, okay, this way you do the code, or this way you design the circuit. After that, go to the layout, you take this particular X metal, take Y metal, keep this metal 1 with metal 2 in the aligned manner, or in the parallel, or in the series. Means everywhere designer is working. That is called full custom design, means fully devoted. So the advantage is the compact design will come out, because once designer has put his brain, what he will do, he will try to minimize or save the cost at each and every step. So it gives me a compact design, and it will give me improved electrical characteristic, because what is our human is also always greedy. He will always look at the advantage, he will always try to devote less money and get more profit. So what happens at the end, you will get a electrical and better characteristic in the full custom. But the disadvantage is, at each stage it will take a lot of time of debugging, because we are dealing with 1,000 number of transistors. It's not so easy to integrate everything. So definitely at each stage you will take a lot of time. So complete fabrication takes a very long time. And of course we are human. When we do mathematical analysis, we use the keywords let's assume, neglect. So these keywords are what? These keywords are nothing but neglecting the parasitics. So if we neglect those things, because it give me tedious calculations, it give me problematic when solving the equations, we neglected those. So there is more chances of errors, because we have neglected those calculations. So disadvantage is these two. Now there is another approach, semi-custom. Semi-custom means half of the work designer will do, half of the work the machinery will do. Okay, so in this means like you are doing HDL coding, you have done the HDL coding, everything. After that, what you do, you give everything to the your this one, your FPGA board. You write the pin specification, and FPGA do in need through his own. It builds some architecture and gives the result. So half of the work is done by designer, and half of the work is done by the machinery part. So what is the advantage? That it is well tested standard cells, because once you have designed and given to the machinery, and machinery, we have we have we have tuned them in such a fashion that no error, means every rules and regulation we have put into the algorithm, so they will not do any mistakes. So it is a well tested standard cell between the users, and it is good for bottom up design. And what will be the disadvantage? Disadvantage will be, it may be time consuming to build a standard cell, which will depend upon the type of coding or type of circuit the designer has designed. And of course it will be expensive if we go for the low fabrication, low amount. But it will be cheaper if we go for the long term, means for the mass fabrication it will be cheaper. Because when we tune any machine, with some algorithm. It takes a lot of money and time. But if we go for mass fabrication, then we can recover those things. But if a short term goal is there, then this type of designs are not favorable. Then lastly is your FPGA based. FPGA is very fast. Write the code, dump into the FPGA, it will do very fast implementation and easy update is there. But what is the problem? Since FPGA it is a board, it has nothing to do with the cost and everything. So a lot of wasteful space will be there and lot of wasteful pins connection will be there. Redundant pins will be, maybe it can build some redundant pins. It will say okay, like 100 micrometer 100 millimeter square area is required, but actually the design is of only 50 millimeter square. So there can be a waste of space and relatively expensive in large volumes, because for each you will give one FPGA, so it is also somewhat expensive. So overall, if you will ask, I will say that mostly go for the semi-custom design. People prefer semi-customs because though here the in the full custom it is a good characteristics, everything is achieved, but the problem is this error. Okay. So suppose if error is there, then no one will prefer that design. Error nobody will tolerate. Little bit money they will tolerate. Okay, little bit expensive, no problem. But the performance is better. We say like in mobile technology, what we say, okay, little bit expensive, but it has lot of features, and those features are accurate, perfect. It is running at high speed. No hanging problem is there. So we go for the that semi-custom. The user requirement, we do the mathematical analysis, then we give to machinery, and then it do its own analysis and then give out my chip. Now when the VLSI gave the picture of like how to do integration and how the things we can design in such a fashion semi-custom, it gives the emergence of SoC, which we call as a system on chip. Then the design of why not to sorry sorry why not can build a complete system on a chip. So we named it as a ASIC, application specific integrated circuit. Means a complete system can be built on a single chip. Like we say board, anything is spoiled in, like in today's technology, every like freeze or anything you take, one thing is spoiled, we say the complete board will be replaced. Means complete system is built on a single chip. Okay, so it will, what is the advantage? We can reduce the area and lot of space is reduced. So according to the customer view, what is the system definition? The system definition is the functionality, that I want this type of functionality, and plus the requirement is always in terms of cost, speed and power, weight and dimension. According to the customer view, this is the definition of system. But if we go through the definition of designer, it says system is nothing but the combination of hardware and software modules. Why designer is saying like this? Because for a designer, the main thing is matter is that what type of components are used in the hardware, and since we are going for the semi custom, definitely some software will be used. So how those softwares will take these hardware parts and merge together, so that is the big task. So here what is happening, this plus sign is nothing but integration. It is nothing but doing integration of hardware with the softwares. Fine, just hold a while. Yeah, so where were we? Okay, this is a system. Now this is the hierarchical flow, how the system chip is designed. So any specification is there, based on that hardware architecture are developed, and then hardware architecture, the detailed design is expressed, that how the hardware is working. Here it is the designer function, it is explaining how the design is working. After that integration happens. Integration means merging of if any software hardwares are there, and then testing happens. If we further elaborate this one, so this design is nothing but detailed design means explaining what are the hardware parts and what are the software parts. means what the hardware parts are there, which are the hardware parts, and what the software will do with that those hardwares, how the software will connect those hardwares and at what time it should connect. So that is the detailed design. And integration means combination of these two in such a fashion that it result me a single system. Okay, and software design means what? If we elaborate the software design, it means specification and then the software architecture and the module design. Okay, module design means module design like in digital we are designing some module circuits. You must have heard these words like mm, okay, like suppose like full adder you are designing. So in full adder you are using some and or gates. So that and or you can say the hardware part is there, and software part you have written the program of full adder. So how those are picked and when to pick and how much should be the delay, that completes is to be specified in the module part. So that is your software part. Then integration and testing is done. Okay, so this is the fabrication lab picture. So it is process used to integrate circuits. If you see, it is a complete clean room. This is called a fabrication room. It is a clean room, and where the fabrication and everything takes place. And around it is predicted at 6 to 8 weeks takes in doing the fabrication of one single IC. Then there are certain steps for fabrication of these ICs that I will not cover here now. Okay, so this results me a chip. And then what is chip? Chip is nothing but a small square or a rectangular die. The chip is also known as a die. This is a die, silicon wafer is there, rectangular. This is divided into these square boxes, and this one square box is nothing but your system on chip. Complete MOSFETs or whatever, suppose single MOSFET or complete some architecture you have to design. This single die is taken here, and it is this complete is a wafer, and then in one part of this one the circuits are designed. And rectangular, why rectangular is taken? Because each of the silicon area can be utilized properly, because taking out the pure silicon form, it's quite expensive. Then dies are made on silicon substrate. These things are there. So this is your ICs. Fine. And okay, these are the companies which are semiconductor companies like Texas, Analog Devices, Intel, Samsung, Qualcomm, Toshiba. These are the silicon semiconductor companies are there which are working dealing in this. And the fab facilities are available at Intel, TSMC, ST Microelectronics, and IBM. What data I got, there can be more also, but these are the fab facilities. In India, there is a company named SCL. SCL stands for Semiconductor Complex Limited. It is in Chandigarh. Okay, once I visited there. So there SCL, they in India, it was the place where the semiconductor, where the this was the fabrication part was done. But now it has been taken over by ISRO, and at present I think don't think they are doing this fabrication, but they are dealing with something to semiconductor itself. Okay, so this is all about your VLSI.